Check one, two. Awaiting the arrival of one more senator so we can have a quorum. Thank you for getting up early and being available. Good morning. Thank you for being here. We're delighted to have an opportunity to have the Higher Education Committee this morning. It's Friday Eve, so I think we should all celebrate. I'm going to ask Senator Moore if he would open us with an invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful and wonderful day that you have made, dear Lord. We thank you for giving us this opportunity to serve in your ordained government. Dear Lord, we thank you for the freedom to express our opinions in this committee. And dear Heavenly Father, please allow us to go forward and be strong, but also be humble. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator. We have two bills we want to consider this morning. We're going to start with Senate Bill 181. Senator Anavitarte, if you would please share your legislation with the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, it is great. It's Friday Eve. Senate Bill 181, Mr. Chairman, I am working off a committee sub, LC 610185S. Is that?
That is correct, thank you.
Okay. I'll just have some brief comments, just kind of as to the reason of why we're doing this bill, and then I'll obviously turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, to any Q&A. Here in the United States, undue foreign influence has had the opportunity to unknowingly impact our lives and the lives of our children and families. In the academic space, our foreign adversaries and countries of concern have been pouring millions of dollars into Georgia universities in the form of gifts and contracts. Public institutions have disclosed the receipt of more than $8 million from China in the form of gifts and restricted gifts. With regards to contracts and restricted contracts, public institutions have disclosed the receipt of over $40 million from China, $1 million from Lebanon, and over $250,000 from Turkey. As the enforcement of mandated gifts and contract reporting under Section 117 of the Higher Education Act of 1965 has been very loose historically on the end of the Department of Education, one can only imagine the true total amount of funding that Georgia institutions may have received from foreign adversaries and countries of concern. Another issue exists in the fact that many of the gifts and contracts granted to Georgia institutions do not have a reported transaction description or foreign source owner. Without this crucial information, it's nearly impossible to decipher where money influencing the action of the state institutions may be coming from. This is a dangerous funding. This is a dangerous issue, as funding from adversaries like China can have the negative effect of shaping political discourse on college campuses through the dissemination of propaganda that favors governments like the Chinese government. Another foreign adversary, Turkey, that is funding American institutions, has a relationship with Iran that has resulted in two countries financing Lebanon to aid the U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization, Hezbollah. The House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform recently, and I just gave some of y'all a letter, I think Senator Williams, I need to give you a copy of the letter, as of February 19th of 2025, just in the last week, have said they are investigating this issue on the foreign funding of U.S. higher education institutions, and have said that the Department of Education's foreign funding reports show that foreign nations gave more than $57 billion to U.S. institutions since 1981. These lawmakers have themselves noted that the United States foreign adversaries hold interests and an ethical to American interests and security. Even with the stricter government and mandated reporting by the Department of Education, the federal department, it is difficult to fully trust that state institutions across the country will act with full transparency when disclosing their source of funding. To guarantee the integrity of our public schools, local education agencies, and public post-secondary institutions, legislation is required to prevent these entities from receiving funding from the dangerous foreign adversaries that compromise freedom and national security. Mr. Chairman, with that, I do want to note a few things just for the committee. I do want to recognize and compliment our Chancellor, the Board of Regents. I know you and I and Senator Hickman have worked on, I know, interests related to potential foreign adversaries that, some may have seen in the media related to one institution in Georgia. And I want to thank the leader of that institution. They know who they are, for their work to resolve that challenge and being a leader in the state of Georgia related to, monies coming from foreign adversaries. Another issue is I do want to urge Congress to update the list of foreign countries of concern, because right now it does not include Lebanon, it does not include Turkey, and I've consulted with our congressional delegation, including Congressman Loudermilk, as it relates to the activities of Turkey, and what does that impact. Turkey has historically been a NATO ally of the United States, but I think with the funding that we've seen going to some of these other Middle Eastern countries and the money having an impact and even sometimes direct impact on the attacks we've seen in Israel has grown concerning. And then the other thing I do want to recognize that our universities are doing a great job at, and our regents are doing a great job, is just around the money and the partnership that they've had with a lot of our European allies. I think there's opportunities to expand that potentially into some countries in South America that are not countries of concern. But the resulting research and things that are making our state thrive, making our state grow, bringing jobs to the state of Georgia, I think is bar none, second to none in America. I think this bill is basically only going after and stating, related to the countries of concern. And I know there's some debate. I've even had offline with my colleagues about, just the bigger picture with China, and at somewhere, I guess, in some shape or form, because of the research, competitiveness and things to that nature, we have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. And I think that's why this body in our Senate and General Assembly and Governor Kemp should continue to, make the proper investments into our higher education institutions to be competitive with the global nature of where, the world is going in terms of business and society appropriately. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman, for bringing the legislation. Just a couple of quick starter questions. What would motivate a foreign adversary for providing contracts or seeking to provide funds to Georgia institutions? What's their motivation?
I think we've seen, over the last decade, this becoming a growing concern. I think some of it is funding organizations potentially, this is not just Georgia, but across the country, that may not have our local interests in our community, our state, to provide disruption. But I think the other part is the research component, and intellectual property and those types of things in terms of what does that mean as our fantastic research scientists and up and coming students that are from Georgia and across the country, are developing new things, the innovation around it, and so just to have that intellectual property possibly taken and used for other means other than what you and I maybe consider appropriate. I think just seeing that trend grow across the country, and just want to make sure that here in Georgia, there's no concern. I mean, when I saw some of the countries, and I also want to be clear too, some of these countries, based on what we've researched, don't seem to have contracts anymore with some of these higher education institutes in Georgia, like Turkey, Lebanon, et cetera. But I think that goes back to, the leadership that the Chancellor, the Board of Regents, and I think some of our institutions, have seen with the global dynamic and the environment to protect our universities. And I think now they're doing a fantastic job. But as we know, you and I and the Chancellor, and some of the leaders of our institutions won't be here forever. And I think that, the growing concern from our foreign adversaries as it relates to intellectual property, national security, taking, maybe things that are being developed in our research labs, and used, sometimes even against us. And I think Secretary Rubio and others have noted that, just as simple as, what we've seen with, Iran, funding drones for, or Venezuela building drones for Iran. The intellectual property that maybe came from different, areas of the United States. So that's kind of the bigger concern.
Larger concern.
Yes, sir.
Senator Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'd make a good Rubio floor leader with this piece of legislation.
I appreciate it. I don't want to go travel right now, though.
So you said that Lebanon and Turkey, we currently don't have any funds as we know of coming in right now, but that I guess has been a problem in the past, right?
It has happened, but as of right now, I think that's kind of it's not happening based on the research that I think we've done.
Okay.
Somebody can fact check me if that's different.
Yeah, if I may, a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
The way the legislation currently reads, it references the State Department's list of adversarial countries. Is that not true?
Yes, that's correct. And just further point of clarification, this bill did originally list Lebanon,
Names.
Turkey.
Yes.
The concern, which, again, I'll let the committee debate, but I think the concerns and potential challenges if we leave the other countries is whether it's enforceable because those countries are not listed under, the federal code section we've added to the bill or, foreign adversary list, at the State Department or otherwise.
So we're not necessarily discussing any particular country. We're discussing the potential for foreign adversaries as identified by the U.S. State Department.
Correct. If we want to set up a subcommittee and talk about those countries, I'm okay with that.
I prefer,
Mr. Chairman,
consideration. Yes, sir.
Maybe you could help me with this question. What would prevent us from adding our own list of countries and enforcing it under our own courts?
I'm not aware of anything that would restrict us from doing that. However, what it would require is that we differ from the State Department's designation. And I think it's prudent to defer in matters of foreign relations to defer to the U.S. Department of State. As far as those identified adversarial countries are concerned, I think it's very appropriate for us to address the issue that the author has here, which is funding.
Sure.
Funding.
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add a few more countries. And
you're welcome to make an amendment, but I would not consider it friendly.
Okay.
I would prefer the bill remain clean.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman.
I'll add one point to Senator Moore's concern. I do think it would be prudent and appropriate, even if the Senate wanted to send an urging resolution to our congressional delegation or the members of the Government Oversight Committee or Foreign Relations Committee to see if we can update that list. I know that list, there was an attempt to update the countries of concern list in the House of Representatives, but that failed in the U.S. Senate. So maybe now under the Trump administration, we can see that list updated. It has not been updated in many years, and I think the global concerns of where we're at today, obviously, as you've seen with Israel and where money is coming and going from, it would be timely.
Thank you. Senator Williams.
I like the bill. I'm very familiar with it. At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
We thank you. We would hold the motion. We have a few folks, Chairman, if you would allow. We have some individuals who like to speak to the legislation. I'd ask, since we've got a couple of bills that we want to work through today, I'd ask that if, as you come up, Hamadi Lebe, help me with your name, please. Connor, are you here? No? Jason Allen. Oh, I'm sorry.
Should be on Senate Bill 129.
It's listed as 181. All three of these listed and signed up for Senate Bill 181. Is there anyone here who wants to speak to Senate Bill 181? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion do pass to Senator Williams. Second from Senator Hickman. A little slow this morning, Billy. A little slow this morning, Senator. I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion do pass. Senate Bill 181 LC 610185S indicate with the uplifted hand. I see unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations. On the rules, if you have a friend in rules, right? I don't know if you do or not. Let's see. You may. All right. We're gonna move on to Senate Bill 120. I'm gonna ask Senator Harbin to come up and share his legislation with us. I would like to remind everyone this is hearing only. We are looking to understand the legislation and gain the input from not only the author and the committee, but also from those of you who signed up. So, Senator Harbin, share with us Senate Bill 120.
Chairman Burns, thank you, and thank you, committee, for hearing us and hearing me this morning as far as that. I want to discuss the pressing issue of our higher education system, one that affects not just students and faculty, but the very foundation of academic excellence and intellectual freedom in our colleges. This issue is widespread implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI initiatives. While these programs claim to promote fairness and opportunity, they are often the results are opposite: divisiveness, ideology conformity, and the erosion of merit-based achievement. One of the core values that has historically defined America's higher education is meritocracy, the principle that individuals should be judged based upon their abilities and their achievement and their character, rather than their immutable characteristics such as race, gender, or socioeconomic background. DEI initiatives, however, undermine the fundamental principles that prioritize identifying base quotas and policies over individual merit and personal responsibility. Admission policies that prioritize diversity over qualifications weaken the overall academic environment. When standards are lowered in the name of equity, we do a disservice not only to those who are better qualified, but also to those who admit under relaxed criteria that setting them up for something they're not prepared for. Colleges and universities should be a place where students engage in open and rigorous debate, where ideas are challenged, and where the pursuit of truth is paramount. Yet DEI programs have increasingly become tools of ideology enforcement rather than inclusion. Too often, they result in a campus culture where dissenting viewpoints are silenced, where professors fear retribution for presenting alternate perspectives, and where students self-censor themselves to avoid accusations of insensitivity or bias. Academic institutions should encourage the marketplace of ideas and not a dogmatic adherence to a singular worldview. When certain perspectives are deemed unacceptable simply because they do not align with DEI principles, we replace education with indoctrination. DEI bureaucracies have ballooned in size, costing colleges millions of dollars in administrative expenses that could be better spent on improving academic programs, reducing tuition costs, and providing need-based financial aid. These programs do little to enhance the quality of education, but instead fuel a culture of division and resentment, pitted students and faculty against each other basis of their identities, rather than on uniting them under a common academic and professional goals. Instead of promoting policies that divide individuals into categories based on race, gender, and other attributes, colleges should be fostering an environment where personal accountability, hard work, and perseverance are driving forces of success. When we emphasize individual agency rather than the systematic grievances, we empower students to take charge of their future rather than blame external factors on their challenges. The time has come for relentless and ultimately removing DEI from our colleges. These programs have deviated from their original intent and have instead become mechanism for ideology enforcement, bureaucratic waste, and the erosion of meritocracy. Instead of dividing students and faculties among identity lines, we should be reinforcing the principles that have higher education as a beacon of knowledge and innovation and opportunity, academic excellence, freedom of thought, and equal opportunity based on merit. If we want to create an environment where students can thrive and contribute meaningfully to society, we must dismantle DEI frameworks and return to an education system that values individual achievement, personal responsibility, and intellectual freedom above all. I want to share with you what motivated me to come and work on this issue of DEI. If you will, hand out, this is a document of a constituent's daughter who was at a college. She was at Georgia College. And she continued to want to share with me what was going on in her college experience. If you look at the front page, one of the things, her first thing was when she joined her sorority, she was required to pick a pronoun to describe her and where she was. And she says, I know what I am. I should not be required, but she was required in order to join. She was required to have to fill out the form as it was. There are other things, but look on the back, if you will. This is a freshman English class. The requirement was this article or this it was read had to be read in class, and I will not read the title of it. You can read the title yourself there. Because I don't want to offend anybody, but if you read that was read in class by each of the students, had to sit there and go through that and read different parts of this. And she was extremely offended, and if you look at the topic matter, it has nothing to do really with education from that standpoint. If you will, it's not only, was at Georgia College, if you will, hand out, the University of Georgia also has a DEI initiatives that are there on their campuses. If you look at this is a page of all the different courses that are related to DEI that were available, and it lists those so you have at least an idea that this is not just in one place, it's in our larger institutions as well. I would encourage you to look at that. We also have in the handouts that were there, you have other colleges that are private colleges that the same thing is true, that we are seeing DEI has infiltrated our colleges in ways. And what you're seeing and what happened with this young lady, absolutely, she was she was a freshman and looking excitingly for college. And she says, what I faced with was nothing like I expected college to be. And she said, I asked her, and as I walked through this, I gave her a place she could go to file a complaint or to file her grievances. She says, I cannot do that. She says, if I do, there will be retribution to pay for me if I do that, and I will not do that. That's scary when a student feels that they cannot express themselves without retribution and what was going on in her experience of what she had in the classroom. If you've got those others, you can pass those out too. Those are the other colleges that are around that are private colleges, so it's not just in our public colleges, it's in our private colleges as well. And the issue of this is that the intimidation factor of a student just should not be there. It should be academic ground to grow in your knowledge and in your life. And what she experienced and what I've had from other students that I've talked to is that this is something they just didn't think would be a part of their college experience when they were there on their working hard trying to make the grades that they needed to make. Just kind of informationally, I mean, I thought this was interesting. This is one I didn't make copies for everybody. You can get it online. Here's Emory University, and this is their Equity and Inclusion Resource Toolkit. You can get your own toolkit if you would like to, going online. So I'm saying the dollars that are spent, and really what this is about, is taxpayer dollars that are paying for our children to be indoctrinated. And that's the part where I feel like that we need to look at this thing seriously and consider what's happening in our colleges that we're paying for in that respect. But I thought that was interesting, just what you would find as a handbook within that. As we deal with the bill currently, there are 12 states that have already either removed DEI, they've addressed DEI within their states' institutions. And so it's not as if we are a leader on this, but we are looking at it in a way that I think is appropriate, is that that's why, as Senator Burns, I said an opportunity just to talk, because I think it opens the door to realize that we need to look at where we are as Georgians, and we need great higher education, but we do not need a program. And I would say this, I would like to replace DEI with discipline, excellence, and integrity. I think that's the issues that we could do and do a good job of it. If you look at the bill, SB 120, we're working LC 610182S. If you look at the starting, this deals with post-secondary institutes. If you look on page 2 at the top, it deals with an institution of the University System of Georgia, a unit of the Technical College of the Systems of Georgia, and it also deals with private institutions as well in post-secondary education. If you look at 23, it deals with the issue of where we will, no education agency will have courses on equity, inclusion, and diversity. It is a issue I believe that we need to address of how our taxpayer dollars are being spent, and we need to be aware of what's going on. And I think what happens is sometimes we don't go deep, but when I have one of my constituents' daughters sharing with me what she shared, I said this needs to be addressed. And that's really why this bill is being brought, is I believe we need to deal with the issues that are here of what's going on within our institutes of higher education. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back to you, sir. And any questions?
Thanks, Senator. Let me start off with a couple of questions. What's your pronoun?
Your Majesty or Your Highness?
That's interesting. Okay.
I couldn't find it anywhere.
Does that question offend you?
I know what I am, and I know that I am a male, and I would take he and him, and that's where I am.
Okay.
I believe there are two sexes, male and female.
In your research, did you find this isolated? Are these isolated concerns?
No, sir. It looks to be that it is everywhere we look. It's deeper than you think it is. There's even one article that I found that talked about that institutions are renaming DEI into other names and hiding it deeply within. You and I even talked about this, is the need for protection for our students as whistleblowers. Much like what happened with Boeing, we had whistleblowers who revealed what was really going on within the company. And I think that the same thing should be for our students, that they should not be faced with something like this without the ability to express their opinions and their beliefs for where they are.
One final question, I'll open up the committee. Have you found any evidence of intimidation or coercion to conform to a particular ideology?
Since I'm not in college right now, but from my constituents and her daughter and her friends, she was fearful of even expressing that she had a different belief system from what was being taught. And that was the part that, like I said, motivated me. Our students should not be intimidated in any form or any fashion, and they should have a freedom of expression, a freedom of speech, and be able to express when they are against of what's being taught. And I think that's the issue that we're talking about here, is freedom and liberty to be able to speak and not to have fear of retribution.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, questions of the committee? Senator Hufstetter? Number, please. What number? 11. Thank you.
I appreciate what you're doing in concept, and I think we need to certainly look at this. And I think our chancellor has made a lot of efforts in this area.
Yes, sir.
Several questions I have. I know you added private colleges to that. I don't think the other 12 have private colleges in there. I worry about constitutional issues with that. Why was the reason to add that?
We are still putting tax dollars into private
I understand
institutions.
that, but
That portion, but we need to address, and I know there may be a constitutional issue, I've been aware of that, but I think we need to look at, do we have an obligation to put money that belongs to the taxpayers into institutions that are actually in some ways going totally against where we are?
so the other question would be on unintended consequences. I know you've got sex in here, and is somebody going to look at that and say, you know, when you put women in a dorm that's better than men, have they got a better thing, and are we keeping the men from being in that dorm? You know, we're discriminating against them because we're treating women differently. I was wondering why you had the sex in here.
Well, I think this. First of all, I believe we're to treat women in a superior manner from that standpoint. I believe that God created.
So we're treating them differently.
I won't say differently, but I'll say the leaders eat last. Is we're to treat those that are there in a superior fashion. I think this is that, I don't know about you, but going through school and going through college, the boys' rooms were never anything like the girls' rooms. They were far neater from that standpoint and better facilities. I don't see that as an issue.
So this would make them be equal on the men's, I guess, then, is what you're saying. And then looking at some of these courses, and I agree some of these don't need to be taught, but human development and mental health, I mean, I don't see a problem with a course on human development and mental health. You know, that
Right.
I've got a BS in psychology and biology, and we have to look at developmental health. I know Senator Hickman has to look at the developmental of our youth,
Right.
and how we've got to capture them in literacy before they get past an age where they can't. The critical issues in mathematics education, just from a standpoint, I'm not sure why that's on the list. I agree some of these should be on the list, and hunger in our schools, should we not look at hunger?
Right.
I'm a little confused on some of these.
No.
I see some of these courses, but the others I'm just not sure why they're there.
Right.
Point of clarification, I
Yes.
think we're not necessarily debating any particular course.
Yes.
Or any particular program. I think we're trying to perhaps understand a concept and an initiative. Follow up, just for clarification, does your bill mirror the current administration's position on
It is.
DEI?
It is followed as we have worked through Ledge Council and through other council. It really mirrors more the federal issue that we're dealing with from that standpoint. And the key word that the federal uses is gender, as far as that portion, and that's what we're trying to. I agree with you, Senator Hufstetter, is that not all the courses are bad, but when you look at what's there, you have to see that there's a lot of courses that you would have questions of whether you believe that those are really courses that need to be taught, if you will, and then what I would say what filter they're under as far as that portion. But I do think we need to look at them based upon what I'm hearing from the constituents that I've talked to.
And I think if you look at the courses, there's a course listing there, but all of those are primarily the ones I think that Senator Hufstetter is pointing out. Those are elective courses within a DEI certificate. Is that not true?
That's correct, sir.
And then there are three courses that are, one of which is required, if I understand it correctly. So it's not unusual to have a fairly broad array of courses that you might put into a program. Another point of clarification will go to the senators. Is it not true that under the current administrative guidelines, they would impact both publics and privates?
That is my understanding.
That's my
from a federal-
understanding
from a
is
federal-
current federal guidelines would impact not just public institutions, but also privates. Okay.
And that was part of what we've heard already, is that many of the institutions are looking at that right now and trying to say, how do we comply with the federal guideline as well?
Thank you. Okay. Senator Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Leader Jones.
Just a couple of quick questions. Where does Georgia rank, University of Georgia rank as far as academic performance nationally?
I'm not sure on number one, but I think they're in the top 10.
Right. And so where does Emory rank nationally, especially their ranking nationally?
I'm from what I've seen, that's not my expertise, but they are also in the top 10 academically.
Depending on the metrics, it's probably more like 24. And where does Georgia Tech, though, rank nationally?
Depends on where you went to school, right?
Yeah, it's number 4 in engineering. What all the states that you've given us, other than probably Florida, Texas, and North Carolina, would it not be true that Georgia actually outperforms every single one of these states?
I believe I believe the senator is correct, but that's because we're from Georgia.
But we also have these DEI programs. But
Right.
and when I say we outrank these states, other probably than Florida, Texas, and North Carolina, it really depends on
Right.
the program. We far outrank all of these states as far as academic performance in our higher education.
Wouldn't argue with that, but I don't know that DEI is what makes it happen.
I understand. Thank you.
Other questions of the committee? Senator Orrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, I'm having trouble understanding what are the objections to the concepts of diversity and equality and
Just as a
inclusion.
point, it's diversity and equity,
Yeah,
not equality. Is that
diversity.
correct?
Yeah, that's right. What are your what is it that you find so unseemly about these concepts that we should start trampling academic freedom in our institutions of higher education?
I think it's more the meritocracy. Is this individual
What?
performance, individual merit-based, how that person goes, not what race or color or gender they are, but it's their ability. You have some cases that have occurred where you look at students that are Asian who have far exceeded the general population, and they're not getting in because there's too many of them already in colleges already, because they're high academics, they score well, they do well, and yet they're being pushed down. I believe that it should be individual performance that we are rewarding. We should not push down people because of where they are as far as their genders or where they are. It should be because of how they perform and what they do. That's always been a part of how our academic and much of our business world has operated.
Thank you, Senator. This is hearing only, and there are a number of individuals here who want to speak to the measure, but I want to take one more question from the committee. Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you, and I think I'm express honor on this bill. So but I did want, looking through the bill, where is DEI defined?
If you go to 23, line 23, and look at, you've got 1 through 5 is the issues that are there.
Because I'm proud of all of our school choice and education opportunities we've expanded to, and so I'm just those kids that I worked with for 30 years as a juvenile probation officer. A lot of those are more technical, and they're when you're taking those kids and giving them opportunities, is that going to be looking at a diversion of opportunity, that they're giving opportunity because they were well behind come K through 12, but now they're given opportunities? So that was my only concern was if we could define what DEI is, and with a defined certain definition that you understand that you're not leaving out those other universities that are catering specifically to those that are coming up that are falling behind for whatever reason.
And our goal is to try to mirror as much as we can the federal issues that have already been done and bring that to the state level as we're dealing with that.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Look, we're going to go to public input now. We have a large number of individuals who wish to speak to this measure. We're delighted with that. We're going to get through as many as we can. In some cases, organizations have multiple individuals signed up. So if you're in an organization where there are multiple individuals signed up, I'll ask you that you come together and that you designate a spokesperson, and that all input is limited to 2 minutes with potential questions from the committee. That will allow us to get through quite a few. I would encourage those of you who either don't have a chance to voice your opinion to submit written testimony so that we can take your input. Is that acceptable to the committee? All right, we're going to start with ACLU. Mr. Baumberger, Mr. Bruce, anyone else from ACLU?
Are you going to include some of the people who signed up on the wrong thing?
I'm going to include them, but they will be last. Okay. Good to see you, Mr. Bruce.
Hey,
I'm so
Chairman
glad that
Burns.
you finally showed up at one of my committees. I haven't seen you in a few years.
Well,
Where have you been hiding?
This is 8 a.m. I prefer your 7 a.m. meetings.
You recall,
Chairman Burns.
we're accustomed to
All
7
the
a.m.
time.
All
Yes.
the time. All right, please continue.
I do want to clarify. He is speaking as an Emory student,
Ah,
not as an ACLU.
Not as a, then I would ask
But I'll
that,
see.
Mr. Bruce, if you would speak for ACLU.
Yes. Do you want me to speak first, or?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, you're going to have to, this is 2 minutes.
Okay.
By both.
Oh, for
Well, that's the challenge we face.
If he's an Emory student. I'm speaking on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I'm saying. He's
All right.
speaking as an Emory student.
All right, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
I'll keep it going. Well, look. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, good. I'm going to keep my remarks as tight as possible because there are a lot of constitutional issues that go along with this. So I am the Policy and Advocacy Director of the ACLU of Georgia. I know a lot of times I go off script. I'm staying with the script this time, Chairman Burns.
Thank you.
The U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed that colleges and universities must remain in spaces for the free exchange of ideas and that the government cannot suppress speech based on viewpoint. In ACLU case, Keeshan v. Board of Regents, the Supreme Court struck down a New York state law requiring public employees, including teachers, to renounce communism as a condition of employment. The court held that such laws were unconstitutionally vague and violated the First Amendment rights of educators, emphasizing that the government may regulate speech only with narrow specificity to avoid suppressing legitimate expression. Just as New York's law targeted certain political beliefs, SB 120 restricts discussions of DEI-related concepts, effectively banning certain viewpoints in an academic setting. This type of viewpoint discrimination is prohibited by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 1, Paragraph 5 of the Georgia Constitution. The ACLU has consistently opposed efforts to censor classroom instruction on racism and sexism, recognizing such laws as unconstitutional. In Florida, the ACLU successfully challenged the Stop Woke Act, which sought to ban instructions on systemic racism and sexism in workplaces, K-12 schools, and higher education. The court ruled that the law violated the First and 14th Amendment again by imposing viewpoint-based restrictions on educators and students and blocked its enforcement in public universities. If Georgia enacts SB 120, it will almost certainly face similar constitutional challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, if you would share that with us, we recognize those concerns and we appreciate your input on that. And I would hope we can have some additional offline discussion.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
Georgia Educators for Equity and Justice, Ariane Montgomery. Ms. Montgomery, if you would please join us quickly. And I would say what we'll do is go ahead and line up a couple of others. There are Black Voters for Youth, Ms. Thomas, Ms. Porter, Mr. Porter, if y'all would be available. Ms. Montgomery,
Hello.
share with us your input, please.
So, good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Erin Montgomery, and I'm the President and CEO of Georgia Educators for Equity and Justice. I want to come to you and talk to you about the ramification of the federal laws that have contributed to a lot of our TQP grants being canceled, and how if we extend the same situation here in Georgia.
That's a federal program, is that not true?
Yes.
Okay, so we
Yes.
need to speak to the bill.
I am going to speak to the bill
Thank you.
because these are going to, if this is the same thing as Senate Bill 120, we're going to see the same thing cut. So America is diverse and Georgia is diverse. And despite the myths of meritocracy, many people in this country do not have the same entry point as others in achieving this so-called American dream. That is not by accident. This is by design. Systems of exclusion have long shaped who has access to opportunity, and this bill only deepens those disparities. SB 120 directly threatens Georgia's workforce and economic future by dismantling the very initiatives designed to create a robust and representative educator pipeline. Research tells us that when Black students have at least one Black teacher in K through 12 education, they are more likely to graduate and succeed in post-secondary education. Mind you, Black students make up roughly 36% of all Georgia public school students. They are more, yet this bill attacks the very programs that were worked to rebuild the Black teacher pipeline that has systematically eroded since Brown v. Board of Education. By cutting this funding at the federal level and the state level for some of these teacher quality partnership grants, Georgia is stripping away pathways that allows paraprofessionals, many whom are dedicated, long-serving members of school communities, to become certified teachers. Programs like Project Propel, Project Deal created real and tangible opportunities for working-class Georgians to advance while addressing our state's critical teacher shortage. The elimination of these initiatives disproportionately harms Black educators and all students, threatening the quality of education for all. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. We appreciate it. As we work through these things quickly, committee, if you have specific questions, just let me know and we'll slow down a moment. Thank you for your input. We're going to hear now from Ms. Thomas and Mr. Porter, both with Black Youth Vote, and then we're going to go to Ms. Hines and Ms. Brown with LWVGA. Mr. Thomas, Mr. Porter, thank you for coming. If you would please share with us your input.
Hi, you guys. My name is Edward Porter. I just recently graduated from the University of Georgia, and honestly, I had a test. Really, and I enjoyed my experience there. But without the DEI programs, I felt like I would have never had a voice, or I guess a place to speak to you guys now, because it really helped me grow and also helped me experience different cultural aspects. Because coming from a predominantly Black high school and transitioning to a PWI, I was kind of afraid. I didn't know how I would be able to express myself in this white institution. But this DEI program, and specifically TRIO, which helped first-generation students, really helped me break out my shell and also helped me get that cultural experience from different people of different aspects of different environments.
Share with us your input.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sanai Thomas, and as a young student, a woman, and a minority in the United States, I know firsthand how important diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are. SB 120 is a direct attack on students like me. Taking away funding from DEI programs doesn't make life harder for just students of color. It affects first-generation students like myself, veterans, students with disability, and even STEM students. We already face teacher shortages, rising costs, and countless challenges, so why make it worse? Georgia's colleges and universities should be places of opportunities, not constant obstacles. We need to fight for funding that actually helps all students thrive, because our future depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank to both of you for being students at prime universities in Georgia, because you are our future and we're grateful for you. Thanks for getting up early.
Thank you.
Thanks for your input. Mr. Moy with Urban League, Mr. Moy with Urban League, and then we're going to ask our students. We have a couple students, Mr. Bomberg and Mr. Wilson, if you would be on deck. We're going to start with Mr. Moy. John Moy?
No, you said LWGA, right?
I'm sorry, forgive me. I jumped ahead of let me make sure. Yeah, LWVGA. Thank you. First, that's right, because I jumped ahead. So please come on up. All right. Introduce yourselves quickly and tell us about about your input.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Burns and members of the committee. My name is Nicola Hines, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters for the state of Georgia. But before I became president, I was a young Black woman attending the University of Southern California in the early 1990s, trying to navigate a system that wasn't built for me. I remember the exact moment when I realized that I had to speak about being both Black and a woman in the educational system. It was during my freshman sociology class when my professor confidently declared that everyone in this country was an American except for Black Americans. He called us just the blacks. An afterthought, a footnote. When I approached him after class to challenge his language, his response was, "It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks." You can imagine what was going through my mind. And in the very next class, he tried to humiliate me in front of my peers, telling them that I didn't appreciate his lecture, the very lecture that pointed at that I did not belong in this country. That year, I joined the Black Student Union because I needed a place to talk about what I had experienced, because my professor did not foster inclusion. And now with Senate Bill 120, you're ensuring that thousands of Georgia students will feel that same isolation, starting as early as kindergarten. Let's talk numbers. Close to 70% of the Georgia's K-12 students are non-white. Nearly 60% of our college students are women. 13% of our students have disabilities, and 1/3 of our college students are first-generation students. And yet, instead of ensuring these students have a resource to succeed, this bill deliberately targets and strips away the very programs designated to level the playing field. You are telling Black and brown students in elementary school that their history does not matter. You're telling young girls that leadership programs to prepare them for STEM and business are unnecessary, and you're telling disabled students that their right to accessible education is an afterthought. This bill does not create more equal education, it creates more limited one. It tells the majority of Georgia students that they are not worth the investment.
Thank you. I want to ask a question. If I read lines 24 and 25 of this bill correctly, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but it says any effort to promote the different treatment. Wouldn't this bill protect you?
No, it will not. It is stripping.
It says any effort to promote the different treatment
So-
or the providing of special benefits to individuals based on race, color, sex, ethnicity, national origin, gender identity, or sexual orientation.
No, it's not okay.
All right.
I mean,
all I'm saying is,
yeah.
I hear
So-
your passion. Thank you
No,
for
no,
that.
I just want to respond to you.
All right.
When you're saying difference, there's a difference. When you go to a school and there's a Black Student Union or a Center for Black Students, you're now saying on that oh, there shouldn't be a safe space for Black students. There shouldn't be a safe space for our Hispanic students. There shouldn't be a safe space for our LGBTQ students, because that will define them as being different. So your bill is saying that if I'm not a white, straight, healthy male, I don't have a space to be safe in.
That's not how I read it, but I appreciate your input. Let's take a moment from Ms. Brown. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm Monica Wills Brown, and I have studied educational leadership for over 30 years. Cumulative educational research shows that when schools utilize the tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion, they tend to see positive outcomes, including improved student engagement, higher academic achievement, a stronger sense of belonging for diverse learners, and a reduction in achievement gaps. And I don't know if you know, but in the state of Georgia, our beginning learners is increasing while our proficient learners is decreasing since 2018 and 2024. While the house is on fire, you don't add gasoline. The difference that makes a difference, a person distinct and unique from another, are the focus of diversity. But what I'm really concerned is, and I know I'd want to honor my time, SB 120 is not logical, and it does not come from a place of love. The Bible makes it clear in Isaiah 1st chapter, 1st verse, learn to do good, seek justice, and correct oppression. Please write legislation from a place of love instead of oppression. And just so we are clear, oppression is the unjust use of power at other people's expense. It involves protecting one's power, comfort, security, and privilege at the expense of those with less than you, with least of these than you. Diversity, equity, and inclusion helps those who are known in the Bible as the least of these,
Wrap up,
also
please.
known as people who are vulnerable, in need, or marginalized. Jesus used this phrase to challenge Christians to care for others and prioritize their needs.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your input. Mr. Moy, and then students Bomberg and Wilson. Mr. Moy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
There are two from the Urban League, by the way. Ms. Johnson, are you there as well?
yes, sir.
Thank you. If you would come on up.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Let's try to be brief. We're trying to be trying to get through as many as we can.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good morning,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, and good morning, distinguished members of the committee. My name is John Moy, Senior Director of Policy for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, and I'm joined by our President and CEO, Nancy Flake Johnson.
Thank you.
We want to thank you first and foremost for listening to a range of perspectives on Senate Bill 120, which will affect our state. First, I want you to consider, Mr. Chairman, that the opposite of inclusion is exclusion. For centuries, our nation has been engaged in legal and practical measures that excluded many groups in our country. Our shared history is filled with accounts of women, Native Americans, African Americans, Latin Americans, and many others seeking the right to fully and fairly participate in our democracy. To have access to education, home ownership, jobs, business opportunities, health care, voting rights, and more, we should not hide from this history, but rather, Mr. Chairman, we should embrace it and learn from it. To the nation's credit, federal laws such as civil rights and voting rights bills of the 1960s sought to level the playing field for marginalized communities of all races, people of all races and backgrounds who have been locked out of opportunity. Now those same measures are under attack, Mr. Chairman, and we need you to help us to level the playing field. While intentional measures to reverse the harm of racial and gender discrimination have made some progress, universal inclusion is not yet the norm. My time limits me from citing a range of statistics, but I can tell you that data show that African Americans particularly have still far less access to housing, health care, education, and economic stability when compared to others. In Georgia, for example, black businesses get less than 5% of state contracts. It is our mutual interest to ensure that everyone has a seat at the table. This is not a time to go backwards in the matter of equal rights and equal opportunity. This is a time to champion and promote the value of inclusion, not to re-embrace the practices of laws of exclusion. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our President and CEO.
We need to wrap up quickly.
Just really quickly. In hearing some of the other comments, DEI individuals are taxpayers too. So we deserve to have tax dollars invested in our community. We're 32%. Blacks are 32% of this population, about 8% Latino, 4% Asian. Almost half of this state is people of color. So we've got to be inclusive and work hard to bring everyone up. That should be our goal. And your goals representing all of us across this state. You don't only represent those who vote for you. You represent everyone in this state.
Thank you.
So we want you to include everyone and, have laws that support our progression across the board.
Thank you for your input.
Chairman.
Mr. Baumberger and Mr. Wilson, students, one high school student. No, Mr. Wilson, IDRA?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
I'm not familiar with IDRA, I'm sorry. Come on up. Mr. Baumberg, quickly, please. You're an Emory student, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Share with us quickly.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Baumberger. I'm a student at Emory University and serve as the current president of Emory's Jewish Leadership Fraternity. I want to speak out in opposition to Senate Bill 120 because I'm concerned about the impact that this bill will have on the student experience. Growing up, my family didn't have a lot of opportunities to get involved in our Jewish community. But when I arrived at Emory, I was thrilled to find a large and welcoming community there. Because of this community, I joined clubs, took classes in our Jewish Studies department, participated in traditions, and connected with other Jewish students on campus. Whenever I struggled, I found myself turning to this community for all the advice and encouragement that I needed to make it through my classes that semester. I'm confident that without this strong community, I would not have succeeded in college. So members of the committee, as you can imagine, I'm concerned that Senate Bill 120 could eliminate these essential support systems for students like myself. Notably, there's no clear explanation of what activities fall under DEI, and there's no guardrails in this legislation to guide its implementation by universities. We've seen that schools like UT Austin and University of North Texas, under their state's similarly broad anti-DEI legislation, have consistently overcorrected in the implementation of this law, eliminating any curriculums that deal with specific ethnic groups, banning several student cultural organizations like the one I run, and firing critical student support staff, resources that minority students depend on at universities across the country. The consequences of these changes are not abstract. They're very real and they're very personal. The FBI reports that schools are the third most likely place for hate crimes to occur. Jewish students are the second most likely group to be targeted by these crimes. Between 2018 and 2022, there were 745 reported hate crimes offenses perpetrated against Jewish students. In the past year, we've seen increased anti-Semitism on campuses across the state, making affinity groups more important than ever for those affected. For students like myself, the programs and organizations that could fall under this legislation are not just administrative policies, they're lifelines. I urge you to consider the real impact of this bill.
You need to wrap up, sir.
Not just on faculty and administrators, but on the students whose success and safety depend on these resources. Please oppose Senate Bill 120.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Mr. Wilson, will you share with us, identify yourself, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Terrence Wilson. I'm the Regional Policy and Community Engagement Director for IDRA.
Would you define IDRA, please?
Yes, sir. It's the Intercultural Development Research Association.
Interdevelopmental Cultural Research Association.
Intercultural Development Research Association. We're an education civil rights organization committed to achieving equal educational opportunity for every child. And we heard a lot of testimony today talking about the higher ed space, but I want to remind the committee that this bill applies to every public school student across the state of Georgia. Georgia students deserve access to the best educational environments to support their pursuits, and research has consistently shown that diversity in schools produces myriad short-term, long-term academic and non-academic benefits for students. Diversity efforts are vital given the history of segregation that we have here in Georgia and the difficulties that Georgia schools have had in fulfilling the promise of integration articulated over 70 years ago in Brown versus Board of Education. Unfortunately, Georgia still finds itself in the top 10 states in the nation for the most segregated schools. And so removing these vital tools that we have in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion is only going to make that situation worse for our students. Beyond simply the racial composition of schools, Black students, Latino students, and other students of color have a particular experience that is impacted by their race. These students experience disparities in academic outcomes, discipline, access to advanced coursework, participation, and graduation. It is our job and your job as education leaders to reverse these trends. Removing the ability for our schools to take proactive measures to address these challenges takes away a vital tool that schools need to achieve this mission of producing the best and brightest students in the nation. The equity and inclusion efforts take challenges presented by different populations and respond with specific interventions that will have the most impact on these students. And I remind you, as the speaker said before, these are still your constituents. Efforts aimed at equity and inclusion are some of the most effective ways for K-12 schools, colleges, and universities to remediate the educational challenges created by years of historical marginalization and systemic lack of investment. Finally, taking away both state and federal funding for schools, one of the remedies suggested in this bill, is incredibly harmful. Georgia K-12 schools in particular have been systematically underfunded for years and currently operate under an antiquated funding formula. Removing funding for schools for efforts to make them better would further exacerbate this reality. While being against diversity, equity, and inclusion may sound like a good talking point, that approach will only lead to worse schools and more negative experiences for Georgia students.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your input. The chair notes it is now 9:05. With the indulgence of the committee, we're going to continue as long as we can because this is an important topic and we need to hear from as many people as possible. I do recognize that some members may have other commitments, but I want to continue at least for another 10 or 15, 20 minutes. So we want to try to get another 10 or more people in. So we have two students now from Kennesaw?
No.
Dunwoody High School. I'm sorry, high school. If you would introduce yourself quickly.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Layla Errol. I'm currently a senior at Dunwoody High School.
Hold on just a second.
I took Cole's time. I took Cole's time, yeah.
She took whose time?
Cole.
Cole Carter's time.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Typically, I don't allow that.
Okay.
But because you are so intense and I appreciate your input, I'll allow it.
Thank you so much.
Normally, I don't let people swap. If you sign up, you speak, okay? And you're not on my sign-up list. That's all.
I'm so sorry.
Please go ahead.
This is my first time at the Capitol.
Well, we're glad you're here. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're willing to share with us your input. Please do.
Thank you. I'd like to start off. My pronouns are she, her.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm not ask others that question.
My name is Layla Errol. I'm a proud Black student at Dunwoody High School. I'm here to express my outrage against SB 120. This bill is not just a piece of legislation. It's an attack on our voices, our experience, and our right to exist in an educational space that values diversity. This bill tries to erase our stories and our truths. It sends a message that the struggles we face because of our race, our gender, and our backgrounds are not worthy of discussion. Without this bill, I wouldn't be here due to the course I take, AP African Studies. and I refuse to allow anyone to dictate the narrative of my life or the lives of my peers. We are here and our experiences are valid. When we learn about different cultures, perspectives, and histories, we become better thinkers, leaders, and citizens. This bill attempts to stifle that growth, and I will not stand by it and let it happen. By silencing discussions on race and identity, SB 120 perpetuates ignorance and fear. It tells us that our struggles don't matter, that our voices don't matter. We're not just students, we're activists, and we will fight for our right to learn in an environment that embraces rather than shuns diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would, please. If you would, please. I appreciate your enthusiasm. However, it is inappropriate to express emotional support or response. It's inappropriate. We're trying to understand the issue, and all you're doing is delaying the opportunity for others to speak. And I'm delighted this young lady had a chance to share with us. All right, we have two students from Kennesaw State. Bloomberg Welch, is that correct? If you would please come quickly, and then right behind that, Margaret Cicerella from Page. If you would introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Ari Blomberg. I use it, she pronouns, and I'm a student from Kennesaw State University.
Yep. I'm Andrew Welch. I'm pronouncing him. I'm a honor student at Kennesaw State University.
If you would please share your input quickly.
Yeah, when I first read about this bill, I thought it was a joke. As a transgender student, I see firsthand how this bill would impact my fellow students. Inclusive spaces, as the bill states, are the only thing a lot of these students have as a social outlet. They are where support networks and community are built. Without these networks and community, you're putting many people at risk of further depression and alienization. Over the past month, there's been a stunning increase in vandalism related to minority displays and cultures, breeding a fear on campus of being visibly a minority. How is it fair? How is it meritocracy for some students to be scared to go outside and express who they are? This bill only breeds hate and turns students and faculties against each other. I personally run a resource hub for students of my campus, queer students on my campus, without any resources from the school or the state of Georgia. Many universities operate the same way. There are student organizations that promote diversity and inclusion in my school that fundraise for themselves and host their own events without any help or funding from the state of Georgia. These groups are affiliated with the school and thus have regulations on what they can do and say. What happens to these groups if the bill passes?
Thank you. Briefly, if you'd like to share input, take 30 seconds.
No problem. I'll be very quick. I'm a product of Campbell High School's International Baccalaureate program and the KSU honor students, and the greatest contributor to my success has been the diversity in education. I have friends from all walks of life and all over the world, and we have all become better, kinder individuals by listening to the perspectives of each other. Because of this, I'm in strong opposition to Senate Bill 120, especially Section 3, which will undo decades of progress that has been made. Thank you, Chairman Burns.
Thank you. Go Owls.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Margaret Cicerelli, if you would please.
Good morning. Thanks for the brief opportunity to speak. I'm Margaret Ciccarelli, representing PAGE, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators. I want to thank the sponsor for a brief conversation before the hearing started about the implementation details of this legislation. It does impact K-12 schools, and we appreciate the offer to continue to refine that language. There has been significant additional detail provided in the sub, and we hope that more details will be forthcoming, chiefly because because we don't want to hurt our teacher recruitment efforts that are sometimes aimed to try to draw more men and teachers of color into the teaching profession. In 2021, the governor put forth a bill that was signed into law that summer that specifically partnered with HBCUs to try to attract more teachers of color to the Georgia teaching profession. So we just want to work carefully on the implementation details to make sure that we don't impact in unintended ways our teacher pipeline in Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. Next, we have Richard Reese. Is that correct? See, Rose. I'm sorry. Communities United. If you would come up, and then Ms. Moreland, and then Representative Bruce. We're getting close. Mr. Rose.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much. E pluribus unum is a motto of the United States of America, all of us. It means out of many, one. What are those many? Cultures, languages, skin colors, gender, countries, religions. Although we opened up this meeting with a Christian prayer, there are other religions in this house. For most of America, it has been anything but diversity and inclusion in keeping with this motto. And yet here we are again, living in a state of denial instead of the state of Georgia. I urge this committee, this Senate, this legislature, this state to aspire to the long adopted principles of E pluribus unum, because we are many aspiring to be one, which means that we should embrace and celebrate diversity and inclusion. The policies of suppression, oppression, and punishment are in direct contradiction to E pluribus unum, this motto adopted in 1792. So this is not new. But what should be new is a rededication to the diversity that makes up the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Ms. Moreland. Ms. Moreland, are you here? I'm here. Crystal Moreland, please come up. And then Representative Bruce, are you here? I'm here. All right. Oh, there you are. I'm looking right at you. I say, where'd he go? Come on up, Ms. Moreland. And then Ms. Sargent.
Good morning. My name is Kristen Moreland. I'm a constituent from Marietta, Georgia. I am here today to oppose this bill because I am concerned about the ramifications that it would mean for children with special needs in the state of Georgia. My son is currently in a special needs program at Rocky Mount Elementary School, and he has autism spectrum disorder. Because of this program, I have seen gains in his ability to adjust to a school environment, and the support system from our special education teachers has been invaluable to my life and to the lives of other students. There are children in this program who are nonverbal, and I am concerned that if we remove protections from these children under the law, what it would mean for an appropriate education for my son and others across the state of Georgia with special needs moving forward. So I do oppose this bill, and I do expect that as a taxpayer, my son will be allowed appropriate and equal education in this state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for your input. Representative Bruce.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You know, I officially retired from the State House.
Let me suggest that you will always be Representative Bruce.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, you know, because they tell me that I'm still employed until midnight tomorrow night. So
hey, that's good.
So I'm still on the payroll.
Okay, very good.
But, you know, the sponsor of the bill, you know, made a statement that he's doing this on behalf of a person that came to a constituent. And that's what you're supposed to do. However, he has one person. I can come up with probably about 1 million people that think just the opposite of what this bill does. And history has shown that things repeat itself. 30 years ago, I was working for a telephone company. And I got promoted to management, and they wanted me to take a class. And the class was how to get along with white managers. That was the class. And one of the questions, and I forget a lot of stuff. We're probably about the same age.
We could be.
Forget a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
we've been around a while.
But I remember this for all of those years. The question was, if you're invited to a white manager's house for dinner, what should you expect to eat? And the answer was, whatever he cooked. And then the second part of that question was, if you invite a white manager to your house for dinner, what should you fix?
Right.
And the answer was whatever they wanted to eat. And I feel like this piece of legislation takes us back to when I was at that phone company. I went berserk then. I went to the president of the company. I had just been there a few years, went to the president of the company, told me he was crazy. And I think that this legislation, takes us back to that period of time. Why do we need legislation that has diversity? Because slavery was real. Slavery was not a joke. Slavery happened. People died. People gave their lives so that we could progress to where we are today. To ask our educational institutions to do what this bill is asking them to do is to say that we no longer respect the integrity of these schools. These schools are doing a great job, as Senator Jones pointed out. They're doing a great job of educating these children. If we institute what this bill is calling for, we're saying to the world that we no longer want your respect, that we no longer feel that our schools are capable of educating our children, and we just are making a mess out of something we don't need to make a mess out of. And I would appreciate, the members of this committee, to really, get past all the politics, get rid of all this craziness going on in Washington. Forget all of that stuff. Look at what we've done in Georgia. Look at what we've done with these schools. Look what we've done with our students. We are at the top of the list. Let's not move to the bottom by supporting a piece of legislation because of what's going on in Washington and other places. And thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. One more on the original sign-up sheet. Kayla Sargent. Ms. Sargent.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I'm not here representing any particular institution, but I would like to just identify myself as a university professor.
Are you a public or private?
Public, yeah.
Thank you.
I echo many of the concerns described here today, but in context of everything that came before me, I want to focus on some things that weren't discussed.
Very good.
In hopes that maybe that kind of informs your next steps. First of all, as a psych of gender professor, I've never once in my class demanded a student tell me their pronoun. Spent very little time talking about that. One thing I do talk about, however, is a suicide epidemic among white men. And mental health, a field here in Georgia that's kind of a desert, right? This is post-COVID Georgia. We need mental health clinicians in rural areas. We need them serving our students, offering diagnoses, right? We need them identifying gaps in achievement for students who may have been held down by probation status or whatever. Right? Those elevations require an analysis of difference. And that analysis of difference happens through scholarship and teaching. And the fields that study that, psychology is the study of influencing and predicting behavior. How can I influence and predict behavior? How can I train the next generation of our mental health practitioners to go out and serve Georgians if they can't study these differences, if they can't really understand how to reach unique communities? There are unique aspects to working in rural Georgia. When I go down to Waycross, Georgia and spend time with my nanny, that's a different world than my Marietta City community. It's a very different world. And my discipline is kind of tasked with training those professionals. I want our Georgia graduates in psychology to be equipped and competitive in their field. They need to be employable. And I don't see that happening if I can't teach my disciplinary standards. I do echo, I hear the author that if a professor on campus is not aligning their assignments with evidence-based learning objectives, absolutely, there's already procedures in place to reprimand that professor.
I can get you
right?
to wrap up.
But we don't need to necessarily dismantle curriculum to achieve that. So please support curriculum at minimum. My ask at minimum is please define what activities and programs are, and at minimum exclude curriculum and exclude scholarship from being applied in this bill. Texas has done that. It's very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your input. We have 3 individuals that signed up on SB 181. I think their intent was to provide input to 120, so I'm going to accommodate those individuals now. Ms. Labi, L-A-B-I, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Hamida, okay. You're going to bring your ACE supporter there with you? Is that your lifeline? Is that where you get to reach out and go, hey, Mr. Bruce, what's going down?
Yes,
okay, okay. Okay. If you would, please identify yourself and share your input. He's going to prompt you.
No,
Actually, I work for her. What are you talking about?
Oh, you do?
My vision, I'm using it. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Now you're ready.
Yes.
Tell us what Mr. Bruce would like you to say.
So these are my words. So good morning, Chairman Burns and members of the committee. My name is Hamida Labi. I serve as Senior Policy Counsel at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I come before you today as a graduate of Georgia's public schools, daughter of a veteran Georgia public school educator, and representative of the nation's oldest racial justice legal organization that litigated Brown versus Board of Education. We are here to employ you to reject Senate Bill 120. Senate Bill 120 is a dangerous effort to politicize our public educational system, and it puts Georgia's educators and students last. The broadly worded text threatens critical initiatives that seek to ensure Georgia's diverse student population has equal educational opportunities and access to safe and inclusive school climates. It threatens to exacerbate pre-existing racial inequalities through its vague prohibitions, lacks substantive or procedural guardrails, and could strip billions of dollars in school funding, resulting in substantial harm to our public school students across entire school districts and universities. The legislation fails to clearly define what diversity, equity, and inclusion entails and opens the door for mischaracterizations that include anything related to race, gender, or sexual orientation. This overly broad understanding of DEI has led to widespread chaos and confusion and has caused severe disruption for educators and students. We are deeply concerned that this bill may lead to the targeting of Black students and educators through the elimination of racially inclusive instruction, programs, and services that help them to overcome unfair barriers and better integrate into non-diverse environments. The legislation's supporters inaccurately contend that DEI policies and initiatives provide preferential treatment or special benefits on the basis of race, sex, or other characteristics. This misstatement dismisses the racial segregation of Georgia's public education in the not-too-distant past. For example, the first Black students were granted admission to UGA only 63 years ago. I'll go ahead and get to my closing,
yes, please.
Chairman Burns. The proposed justification for this bill flies in the face of reality. Georgia is one of 10 states with the highest rate of school segregation for Black students, yet this bill seemingly prohibits increased diversity. 15% of Black children are enrolled in high-quality childcare programs compared to 24% of white children. Yet this bill seemingly abandons equity. And in Georgia, nearly 40% of public school students are Black, but only 25% of teachers are Black. Yet this bill seemingly eradicates inclusion.
Thank you.
This body should wield its authority to effectuate laws designed to truly remedy legacies of exclusion.
You are welcome. You're welcome to submit a written statement.
By dismantling lawful efforts that help schools comply with federal civil rights and anti-discrimination laws.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Connor, Miss Connor or Mr. Connor, okay? Ms. Connor, and then finally, Mr. Allen, okay? Last two. Where it's approaching 9:30. We've been here for well over an hour, close to an hour and a half. But please share with us your input.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Morgan, and I am an education policy doctoral student. I want to thank Chairman Burns and the committee for letting me speak this morning. I'd like to explicitly state that I oppose Senate Bill 120. I oppose Senate Bill 120 because diversity, equity, and inclusion is imperative at both the K through 12 and university levels. It not only increases student retention, creating a more educated constituency in Georgia, but it will also help promote stronger workforce development. I have personally seen the ways in which DEI measures, programming, and initiatives have helped build a sense of confidence and well-being in students, including myself, but also a deep sense of pride in our local communities and the state of Georgia at large. I have personally had the opportunity to engage in DEI programming around women in leadership, which has not only helped me feel a sense of belonging and connection to this beautiful community of ours, but also has made me a better steward of my community, enhancing my ability to engage with my peers and community members, both across similarities and differences. So again, I oppose Senate Bill 120, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Allen, is he here? Jason Allen, anyone? I don't see Mr. Allen. I would like to recognize Senator Merritt. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to make some comments, I welcome you to share your input.
Yes, sir. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for granting me time today. I am deeply disappointed to even see SB 120 and that we're having a hearing on it. We have so many other issues that we need to address in this body. And, I know my colleague, the senator from the 16th, he's saying, he has cases in his district where individuals have been impacted by DEI, but I have not heard testimony from any of those individuals in this room. In fact, all of the testimony has been against this bill, and I have not heard anyone for this bill, nor have I seen any statistics on a large number of people being affected by DEI policies in a negative way. But Mr. Chairman, thank you. I come to you on behalf, I am chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, and I stand in strong opposition to 120, a bill that will erase decades of progress, expanding opportunity and inclusion in our state and our educational opportunities. My colleagues mentioned that people are being pushed out. I have not seen those numbers. I can't validate that. And we're also operating this bill operates on the premise that we are all working from the same level playing field, and we are not, and we know our history does not dictate that. Georgia is home to our nation's most prestigious HBCUs, Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, institutions that have educated generations of black leaders and driven economic growth. Eliminating diversity programs will stop these schools will strip them of essential resources that help students succeed and remain competitive nationally. Agnes Scott, a leader in inclusion education, is another example of how diversity programs strengthen institutions and attract top talent, which we know of right here in the state of Georgia, to prepare our workforce. Atlanta is the cradle of the civil rights movement. It has long stood for justice, equality, and opportunity in education. So I find it very disturbing that Georgia should be a beacon of leadership. We are ground zero for civil rights, and SB 120 undermines that legacy, sending a message to students, educators, businesses that Georgia is turning back on inclusion and turning its back just on progress. This bill doesn't just harm students of color; it makes Georgia less competitive. It is attracting business and talent and economy and values and diversity. I urge this committee to reject SB 120. Georgia's future depends on education that is open and welcoming to all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me time today.
May I ask the senator a question? May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned Agnes Scott.
Yes, sir.
How many males enrolled at Agnes Scott?
Not many, but I do believe this legislation would impact programs that they do have at Agnes Scott. It could have unintended consequences.
My follow-up.
Yes, sir.
How many females are enrolled at Morehouse?
Probably none, but again.
Is that exclusion?
Mr. Chairman?
No. Hold on.
Well,
Appreciate that. I want to ask the good senator a question here.
I'm not saying that's exclusion, but what we're getting at here is
Morehouse is not excluding people.
They're not excluded. It's a specialized school for.
Would you say the same thing about Wesleyan and Macon?
Yes, there are specialized schools, Mr. Chairman, but what we're talking about here with this legislation, that could impact even what they are able to teach. And
Okay. We have some we have some differences that we have to kind of resolve. I would point out lines 54 and 55. Does the senator have a
2%
copy?
male
of the,
at Agnes Stott is what I'm told.
Does the senator have a copy of the legislation? I want you to read
no,
for
I
me.
do not.
I'd like for you to read for me lines 54 and 55. Can
You
you
can give it to me.
could you share that? I just want to make sure we're on record as what the legislation says. Okay, please read lines 54 and 55 of Senate Bill 120 LC 610182S.
Yeah, nothing in this code section shall be construed so as to prohibit compliance with any applicable state or federal administration law.
At federal or state or federal anti-discrimination law.
I understand. Oh,
Thank
sorry,
you.
anti-discrimination
So,
law. Sorry.
this bill is not intended, and I don't think it's written, to in any way overtly or covertly change anti-discrimination laws.
Okay. But I do believe this could have unintended consequences to do just that, Mr. Chairman.
I would agree with you, but most legislation can and often does have unintended consequences.
Right.
We appreciate
And we
your
have to be
input. Thank
careful
you for
about
being
that.
here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It is now 9:33. Thank you to all those who came. This is hearing only, and we've had a great opportunity to get your input. We have scheduled one more higher education meeting Monday morning. Monday morning, what day is that? March the 3rd, is that correct?
That's right.
Committee, I apologize, it's 7 a.m. It's the only time they could give us, 7 a.m. I will have coffee, I will have donuts, I will have biscuits, I will be happy to serve you. Thanks for being here. I might not, but I'll have to find one. Meeting is adjourned. Okay.